Do you feel that you're already becoming too good for slow practice? I've got a few students who secretly think so. But let me tell you why they and why you are wrong. I've been reading this book, Speaking of Pianists, by Abram Chasins. And Abram Chasins was a pianist and composer, and he actually was a student of Joseph Hoffmann. He knew a lot of great pianists in his time, and one of the pianists and composers that he knew was none other than Rachmaninoff. Now, one day he had an appointment with Rachmaninoff, but before he rang the doorbell, he actually heard Rachmaninoff practicing. And of course he was very curious, he couldn't resist, so he stayed and he listened. And he didn't recognize it at first, but Rachmaninoff was practicing the Third Etude of Chopin, which is Opus 25 number 6. He was practicing it very, very slowly. And he actually was curious, he clocked it. And he said it took him 20 seconds to complete one bar. Now I actually put a metronome time to that. And I found out he was actually practicing around 45 on the metronome per 16th note. And that sounds like this. And Abram says that this went on for almost an hour until not Rachmaninoff gave up, but until Abram gave up and rang the doorbell. Now, you might think like, oh, well, that's not that slow. Let me actually show you the real tempo of this piece, in case you don't know it. So even Rachmaninoff, who was not only an amazing composer, but who was one of the greatest pianists of his time, practiced so painfully slow, chances are you're probably not too good to practice slow either. Now let me give you some tips in how to get better at slow practice, because make no mistake, slow practice is actually hard. I can be honest with you, it wasn't until I became a professional pianist that I actually truly became good at slow practice. Okay, so remember, Rachmaninoff was a pro, so don't start with an hour of slow practice. Slow practice is only effective if you're very conscious of what you're doing. The point of slow practice is to be able to hear absolutely everything. So if your mind isn't on what you're doing, it's a waste of time. My first tip, start with 5 minutes, and if you're getting very good at that, you can expand little by little. My second tip is, don't practice large sections. When you practice a smaller section, even if you repeat it very much, a smaller section is simply way easier for your brain to keep focused on, because there is not that much happening. The larger you make the section, the more difficult it is to keep your focus. Tip number 3, while you're practicing slow sections, make sure that you rotate. So for example, if we take the example of the Third Etude, right? Practice once your bar slow, and when you complete that slow, right? That will take you about 20 seconds. Then go on to a little faster tempo, right? A middle tempo. And then if you want, even do it once fast. And then go back to slow again. Because this will give you, it will be easier to keep your focus because of the variation, but it will also give you different information. So for example, if you get blocked in your fast tempo, right? You will know to focus extra on motion and on relaxation in your slow tempo. So immediately the information that you get from practicing a little bit faster, you can immediately try to incorporate it in slow. So that's very efficient. Now my fourth tip is practice with the metronome. Now most people associate the metronome only with fast speeds and trying to reach faster speeds, but I actually have in the past, when I was struggling with slow practice, I used it a lot to keep myself slow. So not to rush, right? Not to increase in tempo. If you want to practice in a very slow tempo with metronome, I would advise actually that if we take the same etude as an example, that you don't practice on metronome marking 44, so not 1 beat per 16th, but that you actually put it on 90, because that way you have the inner beats and it's much easier to keep tempo and to feel tempo. And in that way you're also improving your own inner pulse. So every 2 beats. Etc. So these were my tips on how to get started with slow practice, how to get better at slow practice. And if you want to know more, if you want to know more about the benefits of slow practice, if you want to find about how to find the perfect slow practice specifically for you, and over here we made a playlist with all of these topics and more. You can go check it out over here and start improving that slow practice. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next year.